So another thing I wanted to talk about was, we talked about parenting. I think for me, as a lot of, another kind of aspect of parenting that, I've thought about a lot was origin myths and like, these kind of like stories that we use to kind of organize our life. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, like what kind of fairy tales we tell our kids, what type of not just fairy tales, right? What kind of bedtime stories do we tell them? What type of songs do we sing them at night? What names do we give them? What stories do we tell them about themselves? Before kids are able to really like come up with their own stories, they're already like launched, basically. So like for me, the kind of origin myths that I kind of grew up with I thought about 3 of them on the way in. One was the kind of Nordic fairy tales. Mm-hmm. There was a book of these that you read to me as a kid, and I think the only one that I really don't, unlike now where we have like Marvel movies and stuff like that, and like Thor and Loki and all these great characters, I think the only story that you read to me was like Valhalla.
Probably Thor and Lucy the Hammer.
Maybe.
Where they had to go to the ice giant's house and collect the hammer back.
Yeah. I think, that's a good one. So good. There's so many great stories. The Nordic fairy tales were one.
Yep.
Another one was, I remember, for how much Star Wars I grew up with, it doesn't really register as an origin myth for me, but I would say, or an organizing myth, right? So a myth that kind of defines your worldview and the way you think about things. But I would say Dune. There's that time when I walked. This is a good story. So
yeah,
when I walked, so I was sick. I had asthma, pretty asthmatic kid. I walked into them watching some part of Dune.
We had just finished watching in the Dune story. The Bene Gesserit mother comes to the water world and has our hero stick his hand in the machine that gives pain, and if he pulls it out, she's gonna hit him with poison and he's gonna be dead. So he's stuck here. His hand, he feels the skin rotting off. He feels the skin burning. Maybe he's got that itching, burning sensation. But anyway, and so we're watching that, and then from the back of the house, my son comes in going, I can't breathe. He's got croup. And my wife immediately called 911 because that's something you don't screw with. And John and I went outside in the cold air, which was the right thing to do because the cold air starts contracting all of the I can't breathe. I have to go outside. And I really do. Not go outside, mind you.
It's okay. So I'll just kind of, while he's off camera. So I remember this. I remember, the night air. I remember going out. I remember also being in the shower. I think they ran a shower with like, humidity and stuff like that. So as a kid, I was really croupy. I had just kind of crappy lungs my whole life. And so we had, so I guess now the shoe's on the other foot.
And so I was telling John, calm down, breathe slowly, don't have to be afraid. Fear is the mind killer that brings on death. Calm down. Relax. Or some crap like that. And it worked.
Yeah. So, and this just kind of got stuck in my head. So, despite the 1984 version of Dune not being the greatest work of cinematic cinematography, it was really organized. It was really helped me kind of organize, just science fiction in general, and then also power dynamics, all that kind of stuff. Like more than something like Game of Thrones or all this other kind of fantasy stuff. Like Dune was the one for me. And it all kind of started because I'd had this experience as a kid.
Right.
I mean, I would have been, 10 years old or something like that?
About that.
Yeah.
You weren't in Scouts yet.
I was maybe 9 years old, 8 or 9.
Something like that. Maybe you were in Cub Scouts.
So maybe, as an 8 or 9 year old, starting to get this exposure to Dune. I think I watched it a couple of years later. Really.
And I bet you the scene ring a bell to you.
Absolutely. I mean, and it kind of set the stage for all this later stuff.
And we went to, the rest part of it is that we got in you and I got in the
ambulance
and went to the hospital.
Did go to the hospital.
And because anytime they come and get a kid, they're checking a kid out. They really want to take him to the hospital for the hospital to check him out. And I'm going, yeah, fine, let's do it. And we did. I don't remember how we got home.
Well, I can tell you the only thing I remember after that is I remember as soon as I got they hooked me up to the oxygen tank in the
meat wagon.
Yeah, in the wagon. And I was fine. Like you could just put me on oxygen and the crew session just went away. And but I remember going to the hospital anyway.
We needed to. I mean, that was...
And then what I remember was they put the O2 sensor on and it lit up and it was just like E.T. And so, because, what is that? That would have been 93 or something like that, 92.
About that, yeah.
And so E.T. couldn't have come out 4 or 5 years before?
Something like that.
So yeah, so it was very much like E.T., the whole thing. So that was kind of a good session. But either way, that kind of that first brush with Dune really kind of set the tone for me. Just that idea of
and also the idea that you can have control of your emotions.
That's right. That was a huge one for me. That was the biggest thing. So the things that really I carried with me were that control of your emotions, that you can be in just total control of your body and your emotions at any moment, and it's just a choice. And then then also the mentats. When I was later exposed to coffee, I would say that my teenage exposure to coffee and feeling like a mentat and your ability to, to think clearer, I think that probably added maybe 10, probably 100 points to my SAT. Probably aced a couple of AP exams that I didn't have any right to just because I was highly caffeinated as a 17-year-old senior in high school.
But it worked.
And so that was fantastic. And then another kind of organizing myth that I had as growing up was the Heinlein's work. I think that was probably stuck with me more than any of the stuff from Star Wars or comics or anything like that. I would say Heinlein's Starship Troopers. I remember watching.
You watched it. But you also read the book.
I did. Both the book and the movie were really helpful. Both in I remember watching, having read the book and being excited about the movie, and being a little fascist, a little, when you're a young man, I feel like you have all this energy and you just have this a drive for being part of a rigid hierarchy, which is definitely what military service in Heinlein Starship Troopers is about.
That's what it really is in real life.
Well, okay. But it was, and I remember in middle school when you took me to see Starship Troopers, the movie, you're I remember it was a little unsettling. I was that's not really how the books go. But it always that juxtaposition of that was something that I caught on to as a middle schooler. And
the book was better.
Well, I think the book. I think that for me, like that, like juxtaposition and that kind of that like the fact that it didn't line up like that really kind of set the tone for me as a teenager, right? Whereas like I later on in life when like I was exceptionally political as a teenager. I feel like now, like with social media and the Twitter and Blue Sky and all this stuff, like teenagers are exposed to politics very differently than I was. I feel like if you were into politics as a teenager in 1998 or 2000, I think like I was first exposed to politics in 2001, like 2001, through friends of mine that were going to protest. This is gonna really date me. The School for Americas, where they
in
were
Central America.
Yeah, where they were sending the CIA death squads. Well, they were teaching them all in Georgia, and I had friends who were going to protest that in the year 2000, in 2001, man, that is just it's like a totally different world. But I would say that just kind of, I would say that that kind of Heinlein, like having this kind of organizing myth of Heinlein, and then both like really wanting to be part of this order, but then starting to like see the cracks, and then also, the kind of, being exposed to, I mean, I know now you're like pretty conservative, but I would say at the time you made it really important to teach me and my brother about the other side of the story, right? So when we did the book, like we were talking about earlier, right? Like when we did the book report on Ho Chi Minh, you said, don't just take my word for it. Read this book, but from the other side.
Oh. Okay.
Well, you did, right? Like
I did.
You did. This is something that happened.
And there weren't a lot of books at that point that were positive for Ho Chi Minh.
But you made me read that one.
That's what there was.
And so I think that like understanding that, another good one, Smedley Butler, right?
Yeah.
Not a lot of people really knew who Smedley Butler was.
My hero.
But I think that's great. I think these kind of iconic heroes, like, the idea that there are, Smedley Butler, bonus marchers, one of the first people to identify, even before the term military-industrial complex was coined, the idea that like we were sending America was sending people to fight in Central America for bananas, right?
If you don't know the name, Smedley Butler was a Marine officer. He joined the Marine Corps during the Spanish-American War, 1898. He was from a Quaker family, and his father let him join the army, let him join the Marines. He was commissioned as second lieutenant and went to Cuba, and then he went all around the world, from Cuba to China and whatnot. He was part of the legation relief in 1900 in China, the Boxer Rebellion. So if you've ever seen the movie 55 Days at Peking.
Which I have, because of him.
Yeah, Smedley Butler was one of the officers in the relief column. Smedley Butler was one of the few Marines to win 2 Medal of Honors. Now, let's take a step back. There are a lot of people who have 2 Medal of Honors. Sometimes they get a Navy medal and an Army medal for the same event. Well, that just counts as one. I mean, it's 2 medals. They got to wear them both, but they only did one enormously. Smedley Butler did 2 things. One in the Battle of Veracruz during the Mexican incursion, where we were taking over Mexico for a little while, and Veracruz, and then later on in Haiti. Oh, the Philippines. And he knocked around the Marines. It was, in retrospect, his career would have been better if he would have gone to Annapolis, because the Annapolis people made general. But then with the expansion of the Marine Corps for World War I, and he never made it in combat, just enormously irritated him. Smedley Butler made lieutenant general. 2 stars. And then he came back after the war as a lieutenant general and retired as a lieutenant general. Then along comes the bonus marchers, which is 1935, 37, 35.
I don't know.
I'm going to say 35. It's plus or minus a couple of, maybe in 33, 35, something like that. And Smedley Butler was very well known in the country. And Smedley Butler was offered an opportunity to take command of the bonus marchers as they were issued weapons and overthrow the government. And he said, "Are you out of your mind? No way." And the bonus marchers were dispersed. And later on he wrote, "War is a racket. War is a racket. It's a business." He spent a large chunk of his life in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, putting down bandits and revolutionaries, because there wasn't any difference between the two, for United Fruit and whoever else sells bananas. I don't remember who, and other fruits from South America. And so he saw what it was all about. And I wanted John to know about that, because you look at, the American government has always not been, nor is it now, completely on the up and up. But the alternative is like, what better country could you live in this country?
Yeah,
that's your choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. But yeah, but I would say that, as much as our politics have kind of diverged over the years and we've kind of clashed and butted heads and stuff like that, I would say that kind of formative experience where, both me and my brother were really kind of called to understand kind of both sides of a conflict and understand that this isn't, there's more than there's more behind the Star Spangled Banner than just like kind of blind nationalism. And and I thought that was always, even as we've kind of like butted heads over the years from, the different foreign policy, different domestic policy, all this kind of like politics stuff, over the years, I think that's always really stood out as like just like a good parenting decision to just kind of like make sure that me and my brother understood that the world's really big and there's lots of different voices, and ultimately there's 2 sides to every war, at least. Or as we played that game today, there's 6 different sides to the World War I.
And we won.
And we won. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that was, I think that was a really formative experience. And then, when we invaded Afghanistan and there was like a strong pressure, I felt like, as like a 17, 18-year-old guy, there's just like a super strong pressure to like sign up. I think it really made me think twice about it, which, for better or worse is the kind of decision that I made. But I think that it was in that context of having like the kind of full understanding of this, of like what it means and what it means and what war is. So,
well, I've never ever suggested that you should have.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think I did.
No. But I think it's a question that both me and my brother have had to grapple with over the years.
It is. Every man has to make that choice on his own, on his own 2 feet.
Yeah.
And war is not fought by 76-year-old men. It's fought by 17, 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I'm really glad that they didn't.
Yeah. I think that for me, like, I was very hot-headed, very political at the time, very, also very, physically fit. I probably could have had a whole different life out there, like, serving in the military.
Probably.
But
And just think you'd be retiring now with a good package.
I mean, maybe. Or I'd have a broken back.
Or you're
right now.
dead. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, but I think for me, like, the big thing was there was this, for me, like, the evolution was I had a strong desire for public service, and I think that I really enjoyed the last 7 years working in public health, I think that having that kind of...
With the state of Houston, that state of Texas.
Yeah, I would say that in a lot of ways, that kind of desire to be of service really plays into my decision to work in public health. Or not just to like start working in public health, but just to continue to work in public health long after it was the best financial decision for my family.
Well, just because you needed the money, it's not necessarily a bad reason to work for the state.
Well, I would say at the start it was that, but now I think it's like a lot of things, right? Whether it's the Marine Corps or Centerpoint, like I would say that I have really, I've stuck with working for the state because of the mission and the people, right? Mm-hmm. The mission of what we're doing, the lives that we're impacting with public health, both on the micro side when I was there, and then also on the newborn screening side, like helping these babies get the treatment that they need in a timely manner, they can actually change their outcomes. That was so meaningful to me, and I love working with people and that really bring that level of service and humility to government service, and I think, hopefully in the future that I want to live in, there's more of a focus on public service and helping other people, and we need soldiers a lot less.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
I fervently hope so.
So, yeah.
What's next? Should we stop for the night?
I think so. Well, looking forward to another day at Columbus tomorrow, and we'll talk to you then.
Tomorrow.